Good morning. My name is Meg Detloff, and I work for USGS PNAMP. Thanks for joining us for the PNAMP Fish Monitoring Work Group Rotary Screw Trap Data Collection Task Meeting. A couple of housekeeping tips before we get started. Please mute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon on your Teams platform. If you're using simply a phone, you can hit *6. Also, please turn off your camera if you're not speaking. If you don't see the toolbar, try moving your mouse a little and it should pop up. If you see you should see a bar that looks similar to the one that's on that I'm displaying. It'll vary depending on whether you're using your browser or a desktop version of Teams. If you have questions or feedback, please use the chat function or raise your hand and unmute yourself. Just so you guys know, we can mute you, but we cannot unmute you. We're recording the meeting today. Typically, we make these available publicly on our YouTube channel, but this one will be unlisted and so only accessible via a link. And I'll just kind of mention that again in the follow-up email, and then you guys can just request the link from Nancy or I if you want to review the video again. Right. If you're having trouble with the chat function, here's a couple of troubleshooting tips. Try leaving and joining again, which helped for Laura today. You could use a different browser. Actually, Edge works better than Teams, works better than Chrome. I'm okay this morning. Or try using the desktop version instead of the browser, or vice versa. If you don't have access to the chat, always, please feel free to unmute yourself and comment or ask questions. A quick reminder that PNAMP commits to fostering an open and welcoming environment free from harassment. Please remain respectful. Now I'll have our task leads, the RST task leads, turn their cameras on and unmute themselves and introduce themselves. And Nancy Leonard, she's not exactly a task lead, but she's kind of being a spotlight presenter today. So
I'll hide.
Hey, Russ.
Hi, I'm Russell Scran with Bonneville Power Administration. I'm one of the task leads for the Rotary Screw Trap team.
Awesome, thanks, Russ. And Casey Bleesner with ODFNW, I'm not sure if you're out there yet. She said that she had a prior engagement, so she'd just be a little bit late today, but she'll join us shortly. And then Marie Godobos, I don't know if you're out there today either. And then Polly Gibson of ODFNW had helped us kind of kick off the task when we started this in 2021. But then she took on some additional duties and kind of stepped away, and then she's potentially going to step back in again, just kind of depending on how things evolve. All right, and then with our task leads now introducing themselves, and Nancy will introduce herself in a minute, I'm going to have you guys introduce yourselves. Don't worry about turning on your cameras or microphones or anything. Just simply open up the chat and introduce yourself with name and organization. This will help acquaint you with the chat function and help us keep track of participation. While you guys are doing that, I'll quickly cover today's agenda. After we wrap up housekeeping and introductions, Nancy Leonard of Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission and StreamNet will walk us through the upcoming Rotary Screw Trap Mapper tool. After her demo, we will open the floor for questions and discussion. And to wrap up the meeting, Nancy will cover a couple of quick next steps. And with that, Nancy, I will hand this over to you.
Okay. So today's a little bit different in terms of what this task group has been doing up until now. I'm going to try and, oh, there's the share. I think I should know this by now, right? There it is. All right, so now you can see, I believe.
Yeah, looks good.
Right page, okay. So what started a little while ago as PNAMP and BPA and Pacific States StreamNet had been looking at how can we leverage content that exists on available regional system, whether it's cbfish.org, which is I'm gonna keep coughing right now. cbfish.org that is maintained by BPA and contains a lot of the project information that are funded by BPA. If it's content that might be in monitoringresources.org, such as protocol methods, location of information, monitoring site, that type of content, or if there's content on Pacific States, fish facilities, mapper, or Pacific States data system, like housed by the StreamNet program, or even Patagus, since there's some nice synergies between those two data systems. If there was a way that there might be content that we could pull from all these regional systems to help it easier for people to understand what we do, and do it sort of topic specific as an exploration approach, and go, if we were to look at what people are doing with electroshocking, is there content out there from all these systems that we could bring together that would not require too much customization? So we were mainly looking at what could we do with Esri dashboards that we could pull content together to help people understand what do we do with electrofishing, or what do we do with rotary screw trap, or anything else that we have content in these multiple systems that we could bring together. So we started exploring that, and then part of that exploration was also trying to see, now that technology is making it a little bit easier for us to explore automating or exchanging content between regional system, or using APIs or web services to grab available public content and bring it together from multiple systems to one place for people to explore. What could we look at doing and improving in the StreamNet core and assessment system, fish facilities, mapper, which is already pretty much all accessible, but is there anything we need to tweak there, or an MR, monitoring resources, or CB fish, that we might want to tweak as we modernize these systems to make it easier for us to bring content together from these systems to tell that story. So we sort of approached this task that we're going to be sharing with you, the Rotary Screw Trap dashboard for the Columbia River Basin, as an exploration of learning what could we do to modernize our system to make it easier to exchange content and pull content to tell a story, and at the same time use that exercise to go, well, looking at Rotary Screw Trap, what is it that's available out there that would be interesting to bring together to help tell a story of what is being done with Rotary Screw Trap in the Columbia River Basin. So this is a whole new type of interactive tools that we're starting to explore a little bit, see if there's if they align with a need, mainly for a more general audience, like funders or policy folks or decision makers that are much more less technical necessarily, like they're not necessarily trying to analyze the data, but they're trying to understand of what's out there and where to find it. So it's a different look and feel than what we normally have been doing through these projects. So it's going to look different, and we thought that this Rotary Screw Trap Fish Monitoring Work Group Task Group would be a good place to start getting input on what we had identified, we being BPA, PNAP, and subset at Pacific State StreamNet, looking at what overlapping fields we had that might make sense to bring together, and starting to get a conversation going about how these Esri dashboard look and feel. And we have another one that we're working on too that focuses more on the MAFAC Columbia Basin Dashboard Partnership docs, which we're still developing based on input from StreamNet Steering Committee and Executive Committee, and that one will be coming out later for review as well. So this is one of two Esri dashboard-ish tools that we're starting to play around with, see if they're of interest and if they work well. Since they are slightly different in feel from what we've normally done, we're looking at placing them in its own section on the StreamNet website, which would be in a place called probably Interactive Dashboard. This is all up for discussions, just our first stab at figuring out where they might fit. So it's clear that there's something different from our usual data queries that basically just give you the query. And what we're doing is we would place this dashboard on this new section, and then once people come to this section, they would get some input about what these things are, how they fit in, and we're also exploring how we would provide more content about explaining what these things are, where the content came from. So right now it's a bit of a mess. It's a draft page that I did make discoverable for you all so that you'll be able to explore and provide input. Even though they're very drafty and prototypey, so we're not really advertising them too strongly until we get the full finished product and the go-ahead from the StreamNet committees. But basically, this would be a way to kind of give that context of these are slightly different tools. These are bringing things from multiple places, not just StreamNet, and what it is that they're intended to convey. So that's sort of like the big background, what we're doing and what we're going to be focusing on today when we show you what we've done for our prototype for the screw trap dashboard is mainly trying to get input at this point in time on, how does it look and feel? So we'll allow you to play around with it for about a week or two before we turn it off again, and you'll be able to get it from this location on our website. And Meg will also provide the URL to it so that you can play around with it after the meeting, because it's always easier to get input on how well it's functioning if you're actually playing with it versus watching me click. And then after about 2 weeks, we'll turn it off again. Sorry. So for this first step, it's mainly focusing on look and feel, what type of content we're proposing to show. All this content comes from publicly accessible sites. And then later on, once we're done fully populating the content, then we would then reach out for review of content before it really goes live, assuming the committees like the tool and people are comfortable with it. So now we're going to switch to that tool that I keep alluding to. So what we did is we spent a bit of time looking at screw trap related information that we could find in the fields that are housed by within monitoringresources.org and in CBFish, the project level content, including the inventory sheets that they have, and what type of content we had on the fish facilities maps in terms of location and the standard names that we're using on the fish facilities mapper, and seeing if there's data available that have been compiled by those screw traps either on a StreamNet system or a Patagus system. And then we basically organized it with some preliminary, brainstorming with PNAMP, BPA, and ourselves. Figure out how could we organize this so that it would be fairly easy for people to explore, while at the same time not trying to overly customize any dashboard, because we don't want to have to really do a lot of custom programming to maintain these. We're trying to leverage that full suite of Esri dashboard that's becoming more and more user-friendly, right, to modify and display content. So we started off by locating the traps that we could easily find information on. We located 148 of them. Most of them have amount of BPA funding in them at some point or another. And that doesn't mean this is comprehensive. We focus on the Columbia River Basin as our primary focus for this one. And we tried to standardize the names that were used for these traps by looking at what the fish facilities mapper was using, and if not, what was being reported elsewhere in a more standard way. So hopefully the names look all familiar to you. And we brought all these traps together in a database table that the intent would be to then start pulling from that database table and populating the dashboard and maintaining that over time. The way you can explore this dashboard right now is we have it set up. It's fairly simple, where you can see all the traps, all 148 traps listed on the left alphabetically, which you can scroll down. We've color coded a little bit using a color code / shape symbology, so that people that don't see color too well can still explore based on shape. What would be a screw trap that was operated and maintained by a state. It's more of that squarish yellow symbol versus if it's a tribal operated one, maintain, it's more of a circular blue. And then if we're not quite sure who is managing it, we are using a more of a paler gray circle. So it should be enough color contrast there. And you can scroll down on the left to see the name of all the 148 that we've identified. We start off with the name of the screw trap, and then we identify who's the main operator, operating organization. And it basically goes all the way down to 148. So I'm going to bring back up. This is where it defaults to when you open it up. And basically, for all of these 148 traps, you get a sense of where they are in the Columbia River Basin. We tell you the total number. We tell you the breakdown based on what we could find in terms of where the funding comes for these different screw trap and what portion of the funding goes for these 148 screw traps. And you can scroll down a bit further down to see what all these colors mean, or you can hover directly on the pie to say, okay, about 61 of these traps receive some BPA funding. We summarize the different species and runs that are targeted by these 148 traps. So there's about 16 of them. And then we also show a breakdown of what these traps are targeting, not meaning that they all targeted these, but as a whole, these 148 are targeting these species and run. Then as you're going to start selecting a specific trap, the map will change, the number will change down below, the funding will change, the species, run, total, and graphic will change to just reflect the selected traps. The way you can select the trap that you want to see, you can either go up to select operating organization and then say, I just want to see the Coeur d'Alene traps. And then you see, okay, they have 2, reflected down by number 2, where their funding comes from. If it says non-BPA, we're just not quite sure what it was. So that'd be content that could be refined. And what are they targeting? From what we could find, those traps are mainly targeting West Slope cutthroat trout. And you basically scroll down here and keep doing, the other ones that you want to see, and then it'll just keep changing to reflect the traps for that organization that we associated with that organization. If you click on a given trap, it'll zoom in and it'll pop up a little box that tells you a bit more information about the trap. Again, it's all content we could find either in StreamNet, the Fish Facility Mapper, or CB Fish or monitoring resources. So the data is as accurate as you could find in those system. Some of the fields, we standardize the fields in these boxes depending on the trap. They may be all fully populated or they may not. And that's either, again, where maybe when we do the review of the content with the broader group of experts that actually knows these traps, we might be able to update and populate more of those fields, or maybe we'll find out the trap isn't used at all. So there's still a lot of QA/QC to be done, but this is based on what we could find at this time in the system. There is a View More button down below that I'm not going to click for this trap, but this is will open up a page that's basically a web page underneath the StreamNet website that provides then for each trap all the content organized for these fields that are in the pop-up box, as well as more detailed fields for that screw trap. And I'll show you a few of those. We're still working on populating the content that's accessible for all 148 traps on the website. But we have 5 of them that we populated for the purpose of this group so that you could get a look and feel as to what type of content and how we're proposing to make it accessible. Again, this is our first draft edit. No one's really looked at it. It's just, the brainstorming of our 3 groups. So all up for discussion in terms of things that we, may not be of value or something we completely missed out on that should be included. Keep that in mind as you look through this map, this dashboard. So I'm going to pick a different one. Let's see, Catherine Creek's a good one. So the Catherine Creek one, again, if you show up there, you can have a pop-up box that gives you some information as to who to contact, who's the operator, where it's located, what's the project title, who's the main funding agency, who's the operator, ODFW. From what we can tell, when is it operated? From September to December, and then March to June. What ESU they seem to be targeting in terms of the species they're targeting of Chinook. And then we also have a species present one, and that one is a way to kind of give context of what else is in the area. And we've been a bit struggling on how to call this field. So we came up with species present, and it's basically based on the species distribution map we have to show, well, in the area where the strap is operating, there's these other species that people are interested in that also may be present there. Not necessarily when the screw trap is operating, but it also uses this area. And we capture some of their basic information from CB fish, like if there was a serial number included, and the trap name or trap ID that was included. We captured that in here. For this one, if you click the View More button, it opens you up to that web page that I was talking about. This web page right now is proposed to have all 148 dashboards and their content organized in this format. Shrink it down a little bit. And basically by clicking that View More button down here, it's an anchor that brings you right to where it is on that web page, but you can still scroll up and down, see the other trap information, which right now there's only 5. And you, for the Catherine Creek trap that I clicked on, these things on the left over here is very similar. It's pretty much what you saw in that small pop-up box. And then we also provide more content on the right that provides information of like, hey, for the data that we found associated with this trap, we found an MR, the study plan, and here's the ID and the title of the study plan. This is the URL if you want to go right to it. And then we also attempted to locate the protocol, the sample design. Sometimes there were multiple ones, so we included them as well. And then we kind of did it so it's always the title and then the URL, title, then the URL. We essentially did that as a proposed way of doing it instead of hyperlinking the ID title, mainly because hyperlink gets very exhausting on the eye if you have a whole bunch of them. But at the same time, it helps contain people from being click happy and being redirected to all these sites unintentionally and not knowing how to come back. They'll be on a separate tab. So it's more considering maybe we can do more where if you really want to go there, you can copy the hyperlink and paste it in. That's one idea. It didn't have to be that way. And then, so that's everything we could find at MR, Monitoring Resource up here. If there was an annual report section on CB Fish, we basically brought the hyperlink that brings you to that project's annual report section. We didn't try and do every individual one. We're just bringing you to the correct place on CB Fish for that project. We captured if it listed where the data for the screw trap was going. Potentially, we included in here, but then we only provided URLs for where we could find a data set that connected to that screw trap, or at least that we understood would be the case. Again, that's something that has to be reviewed. That was either on the Catfish HLI, the TreeNet fish monitoring data, or if we could find something in the Patagus system. And again, that's just our best guess at it. So I'm sure you'll find lots of errors while you're looking at it, and that's why we're not considering it final until everyone can review it. And then if you scroll down, you'll see like for the other 4 screw trap that we populated, it's the same organization. They each have their little block section divided by a little grayed out background to provide some distinction between the two. Some of them have lots of content. Some of them, we didn't find anything to bring in, which could just be because we didn't find it, but it's there, or it's just not in the system for one reason or another. Maybe the trap no longer is functional. So we brought those in here. Sorry, just eventually I'll kick this cold. So in the meantime, you got a fun time of hearing me cough all the time. But that's what we've done. So this is where we are in terms of what we could find, pull it together in a way that we thought made sense. And what we would really like from this group is to spend like the next couple of weeks, if that's enough time, let us know if you need more time, to just click around on it, knowing that only 5 of these crew traps are populated on that web page. So, if you pick one that doesn't have anything, you're just going to be defaulted to the top of the page. That's just the way it is working right now until we get all these done. And just kind of explore. And what we're trying to find out is, are we showing the right feels? Is it the right content that makes sense to share with people? Keeping in mind that it could be a contracting officer or a project COR from BPA that's just trying to get a sense of, I'm working on this project and they have this trap and I just want to know what's happening around with it. Or maybe there's some researchers that are trying to get a sense of what data is available in this area, and they can show up and go, oh, there's like these 5 traps that are in this area, and now I can more easily find information on the study plan or where I can find data. So like kind of bringing it together in one environment to help make it more easily discoverable. Part of like that initiative of being a bit more open and fair and accessible. And at the same time, if we can come to an agreement of what type of fields make sense to be grabbing from these regional system, then that can also help focus our work in the next several years of trying to explore, how for the fields that we do want to be more easily exchanging between, CB Fish, Monitoring Resources, StreamNet, Pacific State projects, what is it that we can do to make that connection easier if we can't already automate that connection? So still the first step, like I was mentioning, just to get a look at sense and feel, you're going to have a lot of content in there that you're probably going to go, why is it incorrect or why is it missing? I know it exists. So right now we're trying to get you to not focus too much on the actual content, more focusing on the feel. Like, are you comfortable seeing the trap ID feel in here? Do you think it's value added, or is it just going to confuse people? It'll help a researcher. Do you think the way we're describing species present makes sense to describe that these other species may be in the area using this stream at some point, but not necessarily when the trap is operational? What more did we miss something, or is there something in there that you're going, I don't feel comfortable with that level of accessibility for that content. Can we maybe make it a little bit more generalized? Perfectly fair. Or you might look around and go, I when I'm selecting operating organization, I don't know why you decide to use that filter. Why didn't you use a species filter? So anything that might make us rethink how we could refine this to make it more user-friendly and be able to help people that are trying to understand what we do, like the council or others. Like one of these things that'd be nice is, which I'm, this still prototype, so not really fully perfectly functional yet, but it would be when I click all, I would like it to, zoom back out to all. Fine, we'll activate that. So those are the type of thing. The only thing that we want to a little bit restrict is, again, we're trying to not overly customize the dashboard. I think most of you have had some experience with them, so you have an idea of their limitation. So there's certain things we can do, certain things we can't do. So if you have a great idea and we say, we can't support that, that's probably why. Maybe we're putting too many things and it's actually multiple dashboards. Maybe that's one way that we can improve it. Or anything's up for grab right now. So it's just having time for you to explore it, click around, get a feel for it, and see how we did. What did we miss? What can be modified? And I think I touched everything. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of think so. Oh, we already have questions coming in. Hold on a sec. Somebody's not muted.
Okay.
Jen, if you could tag that person. Okay, cool. Kurt Tardy asked, why are some traps indicated as not available?
We probably couldn't find it. We couldn't find the information. So the Bear Valley one, we couldn't find content enough for it in the regional systems we were accessing. So maybe the data just hasn't made it up to the regional system yet, or maybe the name is slightly different and we just didn't spot it. So that's why right now I don't want you to be too distracted by that, because there's probably tons of content on Bear Valley Creek Trap somewhere. We just didn't find it. So that'd be like the next phase. Once we get buy-in for the layout, we have the functionality laid down, nailed down, and the fields that people want to have shown or not shown in here, then that's when we would ask, go to the next phase with the StreamNet steering committee's blessing to go, all right, we think we know what we want to show. Now we really want people to start looking at the content, telling us, where are the corrections? Why is it that we missed something that's out there that we should be capturing?
And then, Kurt, if that's not enough information, feel free to type more in the chat or unmute. Craig has a great question. What do we need to do if we see errors related to a trap description?
You get the pleasure of contacting me for now, and then I would help you figure out if the content came from MR, and then that's where it would need to be updated, or from CB Fish. We haven't automated the connections yet, so I would still wait for the corrections of content for the next phase, because if there's something wrong in a field that we decide to drop, then you don't need to review that content later. Or if you're just doing your due diligence, you're going, oh, I should have had that in MR corrected a while back. I'm not sure this is a great time to realize that there's probably something in MR that needs to be updated, or something in CB Fish that needs to be updated. But the content itself, we're going to wait until we actually nail down what we want to display, so that people aren't reviewing content that's going to go away.
Okay. And then Mike Bannock, I'm not sure if I understand your question. Fish community in parentheses, question mark. I don't know if you want to elaborate.
Oh, not really quite a question. Nancy was talking about, she mentioned like the other species that might be caught, or, was looking for a term. I was wondering, I just suggested that might be a term.
Yeah, that's a good one. Instead of doing species expression, it could just be fish communities. Sorry. Yeah, that could be a way to deal with it. It's less. It's more saying what could be around the community, not necessarily present at the trap. That could be a good way of clarifying that. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. That's a good answer, Mike. Polly, I saw your hand pop up. Do you have a question, or is that an accident?
No, that wasn't an accident. I did have a question, but I didn't want to. I was waiting till the discussion period. I don't need to get ahead of that.
Nancy, do you feel like we're just going to roll into discussion now, or do you have more?
Go right into discussion. Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah. So floor's open, guys. Any questions you have for Nancy? Any clarification? So Polly, I'll let you lead off, and then Don, I'll read your question.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I love the idea of having a dashboard like with the trap locations, on a map where you can click on them and get information. That seems like a great idea. I guess my main question is, what have you guys been thinking about, like how to show time so far? Because it seems like that's the main thing a person would want to know, or that I would want to know. What years has the screw trap been operating? Has it been operating for 30 years, or is it only the last 2 years? And also, is it still going? Like I saw one of my projects that, used to operate and hasn't gone since 2017, that kind of thing.
Yep. That's a very good point. Right now, we had focused mainly on seasonal operation. And I remember seeing a year for a little while, but I don't think it made the final version. So that could be something we could bring in, which I know Pategas has a lot of that. Oh, wait. No, yeah, we don't have the year in here. So yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, I would think that would be a really important field.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great input. Polly, Don has a question. Is there a dashboard element for entities operating traps? Maybe different than those funding the trap, She thinks it's a beautiful dashboard. Nice work.
So far, we unless I'm recalling incorrectly, we call them operating organizations. Is that the same thing, or do you mean when you have two entities using a trap and we assign it the operating organization, but they have another entity helping them operate that trap? Is it like going down to the next level?
I don't know that it's that specific. I just wondered if you'd had caught that in the metadata, and then you could probably be filtered for that or create another circle, just kind of capturing those that, you know, like on our side of the mountains, local jurisdictions that operate or tribes that operate but with other funding that. So I think we've got fewer funders than we do operators. That's all, just trying to capture that difference.
I think you're probably gonna have to help me by describing it a little bit more in an email when you send it to me. So it would not be the operating organization, it'd be slightly different from that.
Yeah, potentially, but I can talk to you offline. I've got, yeah, this is like kicking up all sorts of ideas for me for our side over here. Yeah. And if you're open, I might have missed this about whether this is going to be open at some point for outside the Columbia Basin. For some collaborative opportunities or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a quick question for to follow up on Dawn's. Is that kind of the distinction between, say, the tribes operating the trap, but the funding's coming from BPA? Is that the kind of distinction you're looking for?
Yeah. So, and we have WDFW operating traps that are funded with local county funds or city funds as well. And so even it's just a little bit of a difference and nuance, and it might not be important in the dashboard. It was just kind of something that popped up when we were trying to collect the inventory of the screw trap, rotary traps, and small traps that for Puget Sound area, kind of looking at, well, actually, I guess we did it statewide. We did it on the coast too, and then looked at who's funding it, but who's operating it, and what those funds are, and the length of data the traps have been operating. And so we've got a pretty long spreadsheet of all that information. Is just certainly not as prettily displayed as this.
Well, if you have the spreadsheet and it fits our thing, we can just feed it in here. We do have non-BPA funding that would allow us to go outside the Columbia River Basin that we could add into the screw trap dashboard, so we could expand it and then it would line more with the intent of our other projects that are broader in scope. And we did want to bring non-BPA funded screw trap even within the Columbia River Basin. So that would fit. Just that right now it was easier for us to start, you know, with what was funded by BTPA. So we did try to just indicate when there was other funding associated with them. And the operating organization is not limited to the funder. So I think what you're saying could work in here fairly well. I am Russ.
So much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Russ, you had a question in chat, but you're unmuted.
Yeah.
I'd say go for it.
Just a comment about the selectability and the options. Right now, again, just a comment on exploring. You're selecting operating organizations. You can only select one at a time versus multiple. Or on when the bar charts, could you select the species or could you select a funding organization? Because when you look at the pie chart, you know, you may have a lot of collaborations, and you know, if you select this U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in those charts, it's hard to, because you have to know that you just select maybe U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service 10 times if they have partners and they're collaborating. So it just comes down to that.
So add filters that would allow you to pick traps by funding entity and add filters that allow you to select by species.
Yeah, and the question is, can you do multiple as well? Because when you were selecting the operating organization, you click on one, but could you click two? Could you
Multiple
click three?
clicks. I will have to ask the dashboard people that, but I know we can add additional filters. I just don't know if we can do double clicks, multiple selection. I have to check.
Great question, Ross. Next we have Evan's question. Can we get details on the RST from Patagus, hyperlink to summary report in Patagus? I'm not sure if I'm being clear on that, Evan.
So instead of just having the Patagus link to data observation, we would do something else.
Correct.
Thanks, Evan.
Just if we have the Patagus trap code in the metadata for the facilities, then can we just pass that along in a query to Patagus? And it would fall under the more information category that you were talking about earlier. Just something to think about on down the road.
Yeah.
I'll add to that. I think one of the questions we had earlier was with the existing fish facilities database and Patagus, and when we had the screw trap workshop or the analytic workshop, a comment making sure that, is there a link to the fish facility ID, marker capture location? So you know what that is. So if you go to Patagus, you know which facility, which code you're going to. So that was just one of the
I believe the trap ID is the fish facility ID. That could be wrong. But we could make that clearer. So bring in the fish facility ID and the Patagus ID. Right? Okay.
Yeah.
This is Nicole with Patagus. And just wanted to point out that URL that you have right there for the if you go there, it provides a summary of the data that's available for that trap. It doesn't give you all the observations, but just wasn't sure if everybody was aware of that.
Yeah, I think that's when we're going to need your help to figure out what makes the best sense to bring in, because we went there because that looked like it was a nice, easy way to connect. But maybe we need to split out the Patagus to be the Patagus summary data and then the Patagus more detailed raw data.
Yeah, so this is already existing on our website, but if the group was interested in having it go directly to all of the data available from this site, we could build something that would provide that as well.
That'd be cool.
So yeah, just if people could take a look at the summary that's available here, this is what this leads to is the page for the site code. Actually, that URL looks like it might be wrong.
Oh no.
Yeah, but it goes to the page for the site code that we have for all of our sites. Yeah, it did go to the wrong page.
No,
so
yeah, it didn't
that
capture
URL is wrong. Yeah, so it should
another
be.
One that's better.
I saw that you had one that was right somewhere. Yeah, that one works.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah, so this just gives you the metadata that we have for this site, and then a summary of the data below is in that graph, what exists from that trap. But we could build something that would return all of the data potentially, if that would be desirable. So.
I bet that'd be fun. But definitely we'll try to include that. One idea that came through a different source was to have us build a little survey to make it easier for people to provide input. So we could probably build in some of these questions that are popping up as options into that survey, if that makes it easier for people to review and add on. But that'd be great if you did that, Nicole. But yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, just let me know what kind of feedback you get on that kind of request.
Awesome. Very cool, Nicole. Next is Marika. You had one in the chat, but I think you're going to raise your hand too, and then we'll get to you, Stacy.
Yeah. My comment in the chat is I'm pretty sure, like, when you select the operating organization, I think the maps seem to be tied not to the operating organization. It must be tied to something else, like funding agency. I'm not quite sure. I turned on the Idaho Fish and Game selection, and those traps don't show up on the map. But
yeah, that's the way to make it obvious that this is a prototype for you. Yeah. But when you come across those, definitely highlight them in case we stare at it for so long we didn't pick up on that. Yeah, good deal, good catch.
And I had another comment. We have, and I'm not sure I don't think we're the only ones, but there's some legacy names of screw traps. I'm sure Nicole is aware of this. I'm not sure how it's dealt with in Patagus, but some of the older traps had different site names. Like they used to be named for the river, like Lemhi River, LEMHIR. And then there was name changes over time to try and standardize mark recapture sites and pit tag arrays. So how does that deal with it where you have two site names for one trap?
That's when you would have to help us connect the dots. So we could either do it one way. We could either show them as separate ones, or we could just have the legacy name be under the view more as well. But I'm open to ideas on how you think that would work best when you play around with it.
Okay, thanks, Marika.
Yeah, I like the way I just
next-
like threw that back at you. Yeah, and help us solve the problem. Yeah.
We'll give Marika some time to brainstorm that solution. Stacy, go ahead. You have a question about Umatila's trap.
Yeah, hi. The 3 Mile Falls screw trap. I was looking at that. It's actually not a screw trap. It's a juvenile bypass facility, but you have it listed as a 5.5-foot screw trap. And that might need to be changed.
Oh yeah, probably. Yeah. I wonder what it should connect to then. Yeah.
I don't know.
That's a really interesting, fish passage bypass.
Yeah, I just happened to notice that, and I looked at. I don't think that the information came from CB Fish, so I'm not sure where that came from. Yeah. But do you want me to email you and just let you know
that makes
what
it a lot
is?
easier.
Okay.
That would make it easier to keep track of everything.
Okay, thank you.
And find out if there used to be a small trap somewhere. But
there was down. We ran one, and the tribes had one for lamprey down around the interstate bridge, which was maybe a mile below that.
So that might be the one that's supposed to be.
Yeah, that hasn't been operated since like 1996.
Yeah,
or 7.
But I think we have inactive one as well that we need to also figure out how to deal with the inactive and active. Do we make a filter for that, or do we only show active on this one?
Didn't you mention in that last question you could have a link with more information and just, we ran a trap there from this period to this period. Not that I have data for it at this point. I mean, that's somewhere in a file somewhere.
At least that way someone would know what happened to it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That would make a more complete story. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. Yeah, send out an email too, just in case my cold makes me. I'm trying to take notes, but anything in writing would be appreciated too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Nice catch. Thanks, Stacy. That's a good question for some oddities. Ralph has a question. Wait, no, Polly, you're next. And then Ralph, I'll ask your question.
Well, Stacy's comment brings up, like, do you want to be including, strictly screw traps only, or juvenile monitoring facilities more generally, because you have like the scoop traps and the juvenile bypass. But the thing I originally raised my hand to talk about was relating to what Nicole and Marika were talking about a minute ago. I know Nicole knows this and a lot of people do, but like a lot of the existing screw traps don't have specific facility IDs in Patagus right now. I mean, maybe that's a separate issue, and like, should they all have specific facility IDs? But something to think about, I guess, is that if you link it strictly to a facility ID in Patagus, like I know a lot of my traps don't currently have one of those.
Maybe they just associate with an overarching one?
Yeah, our traps right now are just associated with a river code, like what Marika was talking about. Like the Lemhi trap used to be it didn't have a specific facility ID, so it was just Lemhi River, and then they got a specific facility ID, so it became a specific site. I think there's still a lot of traps that don't have a specific facility ID.
Okay, so maybe we need to bring in build fields.
Or work on getting all the traps to have an ID. Yeah, either way.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Polly. Those are great questions. And Ralph asks, how do you do the filter by target species? He only sees the organization filter. He thinks it would be beneficial to actually include all juvenile fish collection traps / facilities and not limit it to just screw traps.
So expand to anything that touches a juvenile fish. And yeah, we don't have the species filter yet, but you're saying that's a good idea.
Is that right, Ralph? Okay, you can either unmute or you can just type. Anybody else with questions? Feel free to unmute. Nancy, I do have a question too. What about sensitive locations as far as like private landowners or people who don't want stuff published, like on the internet for ease of accessibility?
Yeah, that's something that we could definitely work on. If there is something extremely sensitive, I mean, there's a couple ways we could handle it, right? We can either make it so that the square is much broader an area instead of a very specific location, or we could and not include the lat long specifically for that area. We could potentially maybe just tie it to a huck, or we could say, or we could tie it to the operating organization's headquarters and just kind of have under view more, a blank lat long, and under view more just say specific location not revealed. That there could be a way that we could handle that. We would need to know which ones you don't want to make easily visible. I mean, all these lat longs and location do come from public systems, but obviously, there's public system and then there's level accessibility, right? So if something needs to be a little less easy to find, we can consider ways to generalize it.
Awesome. And I guess just to follow up with that too, so the tool is displaying exact locations?
As far as we can tell, yeah. We try to make sure nothing ended up in the field. So Van had already done some work with that through the StreamNet fish facility mapper to make sure that it made sense that the trap was indicated in a certain location. We might be off a little bit, and then there's always the issue of if someone didn't move the trap and it was never updated in any of these systems that we looked at, then it's only as accurate as what content we saw. So in a way, this is also a good way of when we get to the point of reviewing the content, there'll be a nice feedback loop to find out what content is existing that we're grabbing that might need to be updated. And building of that question, there is also the challenge right now that we had hoped to automate all these connections right off the bat, and as part of the experiment of seeing what could we automate from the system, there's still a lot of things that are manual that we need to populate, but we're seeing as being, well, it's a small enough project that we can task someone to update it manually for a little while until the systems can be modified to more easily talk to each other and exchange content. Because that's what we're still driving to for the overall purpose of having a better connection with MRCB fish and our StreamNet Pacific State systems. And Patagus is one of those.
Awesome, thanks, Nancy. Ralph followed up and said, yes, a filter by target species and species present would be nice. And then Stacy, you had your hand up, so feel free.
Actually, Megan, that was a really good point you brought up. I hadn't thought about that, but most of our trap sites are on private property. We've always just provided long lats, I've never really thought about like how that's being put out to the public. Is it possible to have a field in there that just says, private or public land? So if somebody, a grad student, let's say, was interested and goes, oh, I think I'll go out and check out this site. Not realizing it's on, not realizing, oh, that's on private property. I hadn't thought about any of this until Megan brought up that point. And I thought, oh man, I haven't talked to my landowners to let them know, like, hey, I'm putting your long lats for these traps out into the public realm without asking their permission.
And that could be something we do during the content review if you guys can help us figure out what's public versus private, and we could add that as a field that maintain. And then we could also choose to, if you know that you have some landowners that have already expressed concern about anyone just showing up. Maybe that's one of the lat longs that we have in our system, but that we find a different way of displaying the location on the map, so it's not as obvious which driveway to go to. Yeah.
All right. Anybody else have questions? You can unmute. You can type in the chat if you're shy.
I like Stacy's idea about having a field that indicates that it's on a private location, so not accessible to the public or something to that effect. So.
Yeah. Actually, that's a good point. You need to like further. It's nice to say public-private, but also define that by private, I mean just don't go hang out there. Right. Yeah, no trespassing.
I kind of have a side question too. Do we have a form or a list of questions ready to maybe distribute to some of the folks on the call to help like guidance for what input to provide? Do
I
we
think
have
we have to build
anything
that
like
in
that?
MS Forms. We could probably do it in, should we do it in MS Forms and then just have a lot of open field for people to write? And then if they can do it there or just do it by email and then we have to collate everything ourselves. Jen has an idea.
I was just gonna say that a form can be good because it does collate it, but we don't want to give people the idea that they have to do ABC 1 to 10 or whatever, right? So I think that it would be nice to give folks some kind of guide, like please, check out this, and this, but also as we want everyone to understand that this has been a great conversation. There's a bunch of new ideas. So we want more of that. We want you to confirm what you like and don't like about what you see. We'd love to hear your new ideas and things that we hadn't thought about. If you poke around, I'm sure there'll be more of those. So a form could be nice, Nancy, because it might remind
just make
people
sure we
that,
have
hey,
a lot,
check this, but just so everyone hears us say, like,
one.
Yeah, don't be constrained. And I see Travis asking about errors. I'm sure that, yes.
Just give me tons of errors, but what we really want to focus on right now is, because I don't want people spending a lot of time trying to correct the content in here if it turns out that we delete like half of these fields or switch them out with something else. So I would start off more, look at the fields that we're proposing to include, the type of content we're proposing to include, how we're labeling them, how we're organizing it, how it's working, catch those glitch that we missed, that IDFNG, for some reason we chose not to allow you to see IDFNG's map if you click that organization, and focus more on that for this level. And then once we actually nail down what we're going to be putting into this dashboard, then that's when we're going to do the next phase. Make sure StreamNet committee and the others are all comfortable as well. Then go, okay, now we're ready for content review. And then we'll have a more structured approach to how we can capture the correction so that we know, oh, if that came from MR, you need to make sure there's a feedback to whoever entered it in MR so that we're not, ending up with a dashboard that has updated version that doesn't match the original source that we were targeting. So we'll content errors, flag them for yourself, but we're going to have another round later on when we actually know what content we have in here to really focus on correcting the content. So in terms of, so we'll need a bit of time to do the guidance in an MS form, and it can be used in MS form or just do your own email to Meg and I. That's fine too, but we'll probably take a day to get that out. And then do you think 2 weeks is enough for people to really play around with this prototype and get a sense of what they like, what they don't like? Or I don't want to leave this site live for very long, so I'm trying to contain the amount of time that we have as a group to play around with it before I turn it off again. But everyone's vacation. You think, I'm trying to pull up my calendar.
Field seasons too, yeah.
Field
if you guys
season,
are kind of swamped right now, it's good to know, or if there's a better time to open it up for you guys to look at. And there isn't a way to give people like a link to it, like not displayed, right, Nancy? You'd have to have like StreamNet.
Well, I can just give the link to it and not make it, it'll still be public, but as long as it will be less easy to discover. So maybe give a month. Would a month be enough for people? Someone put something in the chat to give us an idea, like is a month long enough? And then I can turn it off, or?
Yeah, I'll put.
I would suggest 3 weeks, because next week's
3
kind of a
weeks.
loss, right? A lot of people will take a short
Mhm.
week or maybe even the whole week off with the holiday. 3 weeks. I think, you know, what we see sometimes, Nancy, is like most of the responses are in the first few days.
Yeah.
So maybe a couple weeks and then a reminder that you got one more week. That would be my suggestion.
So when you say 3 weeks, you mean close it on comments due by the 21st?
That I would suggest that. I see Travis is looking for a month, but so I would say shoot for 3, and then, you know, if you
We'll
really
see.
really can't get it done, let us know.
That possible
Alright.
for you, Travis?
I see a lot of thumbs up.
Okay, so we'd close on July 21st, and well, Meg and I will work on getting it at instructional email out to the group.
And then Nancy, timeline after input, so timeline of that would be ready for review by StreamNet or any other partners.
Well, we have a steering committee in September, so I'm trying to make sure that we have as much as input we have in the next version ready for us to discuss at the StreamNet steering committee. And then if they're okay with the fields, then after September, we probably start nailing down the content. Because I'm not sure when the executive committee is meeting yet. So we probably take it a step further before we share it with the executive committee.
Okay, excellent. We're getting lots of thumbs up. Next steps after review, or just next steps in general, I guess.
After people have reviewed it and we've changed the revised version, we'd come back and show them how we interpreted the input. And depending on how that syncs up with the steering committee, the StreamNet steering committee, we may have just one meeting where we show them what we've done, and plus then start the content review. Or if it doesn't sync up rightly, we might have 2 meetings where we just come back, show you what we did to the mock-up, to the prototype, and then have another meeting when we're ready to initiate the content review. So there's a bit of, depending on how long it takes for us and how that aligns with the StreamNet steering committee. So still a bit of flexibility. We still have a bit of time.
Okay, that's great. I think that helps everybody kind of understand what's coming next after the initial input. All right, guys. We're getting ready to wrap up. If anybody's got any questions, feel free to unmute and ask now, or type it in the chat, or email me or Nancy after the meeting. I'll send you guys a follow-up email with various things, links to the unlisted video. If you guys weren't on earlier, we typically make our videos public. Just with this one, since it's more of a draft prototype deal, we're gonna go ahead and just make it unlisted. But I can send you guys the link if you want them, or if someone else in your agency wants to watch the video and they weren't able to be here today, we can give them the video. It's not a big deal. We just don't want the public to be able to access it, since this is really a draft sort of situation. All right. Anybody else? Questions, comments, concerns? All right. Excellent. I'd like to thank Nancy for giving us such an amazing demo of a very pretty tool. I think this will be really cool when you guys refine it, and probably be really helpful to the region. All right, Nancy, any closing comments?
No, just really appreciate your help and helping us figure out what makes sense to move forward in this new, we'll call it the new era of systems talking to each other and trying to find a way to make it more open and accessible to people to understand what we have.
Definitely. Yeah, we really, hand up, Russell. Yeah, we appreciate you guys being here and helping and providing feedback and fine tuning the tool so that it is beneficial to everybody in the region. Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, no, I want to thank Nancy. And one of the things that we wanted to make sure, what we were trying to test, was the fish facilities mapper on StreamNet wasn't being updated, wasn't synced with Patagus or other facilities. And I think the question is, if this works, can we pursue the other facilities like the pit arrays weirs, and making sure that those are up to date. We know who's operating them, and we try to maximize linkages between systems to update the information.
Those two systems. Yeah, the fish facility grabs content from the StreamNet data system and Patagus data system. So if there's some glitch going on in there, we need to double check, but they should be synced up. And this is a good way of finding out if there's a glitch somewhere, right? Because as we start pulling, we start realizing there's something else. I think they'll make it more obvious, but that is the intent. Fish facility draws from the other systems.
Is there some other system in addition to those two that you're talking about, Russell?
Oh, no, I was just making sure that, just like the fish facilities, we have a separate thing for the screw trap summary. Would there be a quick dashboard on the arrays? I mean, Patagus goes there. Do we have a quicker, when people ask, where are the weirs? Where are we doing those other traps, or the 3 mile trap? Where do those pop in? And so I think it's just that other summary that we may see after this goes and evolves. Is there a different little dashboard for the other types, or do they get integrated to see the other data? But thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, maybe Nicole will be the one doing the array one now that she sees how they work. She might.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Sorry you're coughing so much, Nancy. Hope you get a cough drop in your future.
Oh well.
Well, thanks everybody.
Yeah. Thanks everybody. Yeah, and I'll send you guys a follow-up email in the next couple of days.
Yeah, and we'll work on that little form real quick.
And I'll turn off recording. Thanks everybody.